Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're just going to give a couple of minutes for everybody to start rolling in. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Okay, well, we can just go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, from wherever you are. This is the second series in our youth preparation series that is intended to focus on a particular advocacy area and generate conversation, generate dialogue as we gear up for CSW and the forum. And of course, this year we have Beijing Plus 30. The Youth Prep series is put on by our wonderful Global Youth Fellows. And I'm going to drop a link in the chat for registration links for the upcoming sessions, so you can join those as well. But we have a really wonderful program for you all today, and I'm going to pass it over to Hawa, who's going to do some introductions. Take it away, Hawa.
Rida, I think Rida is going to lead on this. Rida.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I'm very glad to introduce our panelists for today's session. First of all, I will be introducing our Global Youth Fellows, one of whom is Marcelina Amin. She is a dedicated leader and researcher with a strong focus on youth and women's empowerment, and she is the founder and president of Girls Towards Leadership. She has led numerous initiatives to empower Afghan girls through leadership programs, STEM education, and community outreach. And she is passionate about creating opportunities for the undeserved and underserved and privileged communities, and has represented Afghan girls at international forums, which also includes the United Nations. And the second panelist is also our Global Youth Fellow, Hawa Dunor-Varney. I hope I have announced it correct, Hawa. Yeah. So she is an advocate, facilitator, researcher, and entrepreneur. And she is also a development specialist. She has more than 13 years of professional experience. She has been working on gender, women, and girls' rights. And she holds a master's degree in rural development from the Sokoine University of Agriculture in the United Republic of Tanzania. She is also a graduate of the Women Lead Institute with a certificate in women's leadership in Washington, D.C., United States of America. She is also an alumna of the prestigious Mandela Washington Fellowship and the President's Young Professional Program. And we have a third panelist for today. I am not sure if he has joined us or he's here with us. Our third panelist for today is Mr. Iqbal Ahmed Detho. He is the chairperson of the Sindh Human Rights Commission, the SHRC. He completed his master's in human rights from the London School of Economics in the United Kingdom as a Chevening Scholar, and he's a Herbert H. Humphrey Fellow on Law and Human Rights at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, University of Minnesota in the United States. He has also served as a member from the Sindh province in Pakistan for the National Commission on the Rights of the Child, and he has worked in numerous such regional institutions like the Provincial Committee on Prevention on Child Marriage, Women Development Department, and he also is a teacher. He teaches curriculum development program in the Sindh Police in Pakistan. So these are our panelists for today. And before I start the questions, I will just slightly speak a little bit about the role of human rights institutions. This is something that plays a critical role in promoting and protecting the human rights of women and girls globally. And initially, human rights institutions were formed under the Paris Principles when they were adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 1993, which set up their criteria, their roles, and responsibilities. which include independence and autonomy. The institutions must be independent from the government. They have a mandate to promote and protect human rights through monitoring human rights violations, through advising the governments. Then they have the powers for investigation and reporting, which means that they can conduct inquiries into human rights abuses. They engage with international treaty bodies like the United Nations and International Labour Organization. And under the Beijing Platform for Action, which was adopted in the Fourth World Conference on Women in 1955, there were certain roles which were given to the human rights institution, which includes eliminating discrimination against women through its powers of monitoring and advocating, advancing women's participation, encouraging women's leadership, combating gender based violence, ensuring women and girls have equal access to resources, and holding governments accountable as well. And I'm very excited today to move forward with a discussion about the human rights institutions and the role they play. Now I will be asking the questions, and I will also be giving the opportunity to all the participants to answer, to make questions so that our panelists can answer them as well. So the first question I will be asking from Mr. Iqbal, who is the chairperson of the commission. That it's very good to have you here, Mr. Iqbal Ahmed Detho. And could you elaborate a little bit on the role of human rights institutions, such as you're heading the Sindh Human Rights Commission, in how they address women's human rights? I think you may be on mute.
Thank you, Barrister Rida, for having Sindh Human Rights Commission's perspective and personally mine. So I must welcome all the participants in this today's panel discussions on the Zoom. Responding to your question, all around the world, there is a mechanisms which are called the non-judicial mechanisms of redressals. And earlier, if you can trace back the history, that in the initially the institutions of the ombudspersons are the one subject commissions, like equality or non-discrimination commissions are one. So generally, these non-judicial mechanism of redressals comprises ombudsperson's offices, equality commissions, non-discrimination offices, and after the Paris principles, which you mentioned in 1992 late, these resolution was adopted by the General Assembly, and therefore it is called the Paris Principles. So these institutions are basically called the National Human Rights Institutions at the country level. There are certain countries which are unitary in nature, and there are certain countries which are federal or a confederation. So they have the state or a regional sub-level commissions, which I am also heading. The Sindh Human Rights Commission, that is the Sub-National Human Rights Commission as well. Yes, if you can trace the history, that when the Commission on Human Rights, CHR, was established in the United Nations in January 1946, the earlier resolutions of the Commission on Human Rights were calling upon the national monitoring mechanisms at the state level. So this talk about, when we are talking about the monitoring of human rights or oversight and monitoring at the national level, it is not new. This has emanated from the 1946, and then resolution was also paused in 1958. And then fast forward, these institutions has developed. So these are called the, basically they are the quasi-judicial, some may be quasi-judicial, some may be administrative in nature. In our countries, like they have the quasi-judicial function, they have the reviewing of the policy laws. So in our country, the key function is individual and collective grievances, reviewing the existing laws. Then it is the fact finding and having the research on certain areas, and also inculcating the promotional role in the training, academia, and all these things. And fifth one role is the compliance with the international systems. And that you rightly mentioned, either it may be UN system, it may be ILO system, it may be UN international humanitarian law system, international criminal law system, or international refugee law system. So they are supposed to ensure the compliance to which the state parties are committed, are legally bound. Coming to the women rights, you will see that the when initial declaration on women rights was passed in 1950s, and then CEDA was adopted. CEDA, when it was adopted, then the movement has started around the world. The first one was the World Conference on the Rights of Women, and that was probably the first one was the 1974 from the Mexico. And then the fourth one you mentioned, so that they adopted the Beijing Platform of Action, declaration and platform of action. So it has the 12 critical areas. So what are the how we can play a effective role for a woman? Yes, a that either it is a collective or a individual redressal grievances of a woman. Like in our country, domestic violence is a issue, like child marriages are issues, like women are being deprived of their right to inheritance and property, like you can see the women are given low wages, and they are not given the employment, the gender discrimination in the employment, and these things. So we have a role in addressing their individual grievances of individual nature or a collective nature when their rights are systematically violated, or they are the widespread abuses. Number one. Number two, like that in our mandate of reviewing the law, policy, and practices, if they are not in compatibility with our national legal framework or international legal framework, so we had to advise the governments that we had to bring our national domestic municipal law in line with the international obligations. So that is the second review, and I think I will be very much happy to share with the participants that you led one of the study with the Sindh Human Rights Commission in developing the roadmap on the domestic violence prevention. So that was our one of the role. And again, you are going to initiate on the technological assisted violence, how women are being suffering, or for that the harmful traditional practices, or the issue of the legitimacy and the adoption of the children born to the mothers who are unmarried or who are divorced, and all these things. So we have a very important role in informing the governmental bodies to formulate the policy. If there is no normative thing is not there, if norm is there, if it has an application gap, it has an implementation mechanism gap, if it is not in compliance with the international treaty, so we had to recommend the government. That is the second role which I am telling you. The third one is that with the duty bearers, because the spectrum of the duty bearers is now so broader. It is not only the government, but it is the academia, it is the civil society, it is the general public at large. So human rights commissions, national human rights institutions have the important role in awareness, in educating, in training. So this is our fourth role. And fifth one, as I already mentioned, that recently we had also coordinated with the government departments that what are the areas of the Beijing Platform of Action, either it is a gender data, or it is a empowerment, it is a protection, or it is the legislative. So Sindh Human Rights Commission as a subnational human rights institution has effectively contributed towards these things. So I must say that apart from UN bodies, apart from government administrative bodies, this is a layer which can bring a lot of things which issues are not even reported by the governments themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Iqbal. As a chairperson, you highlighted us some of the things that the commissions have the powers and functions to do and how they have been effectively working in Pakistan. Now, coming to our second panelist for the day, my Global Youth Fellow, Mursalina Amin, because she has helped and worked with Afghan women. So I would like to ask her that what are the significant challenges that you have faced in advocating for women's rights and how you have been able to navigate those challenges?
Mhm. Thank you so much, Rida, and everybody. Hi, everyone. I hope you all are doing good. As Rida said, I'm Rosalina Amin. I'm also a Global Youth Fellow. I'm the founder and president of a nonprofit organization. It's named Ghost for Leadership Organization. And its aim is to provide educational opportunities, advocacy force for girls and women in Afghanistan, also providing capacity building programs for them. So the challenges for me to navigate while I was working for women during the time in Afghanistan, also right now that I'm working. My country, Afghanistan, is not so much different from Pakistan, that is a neighboring country, as our other panelists was speaking of everything related to that. My country is also a traditional country. Majority of the people, I'm not talking generally, but majority of the people, majority in Afghanistan do not believe in women's rights, do not want women's rights, because they see it as a foreign thing, as not something that is ingrained in our society, not something from our country. So they see it as something foreign, something that's coming from Western world. So they do not like it. They do not believe in it. So with that, it brings a lot of challenges on the way of people who are working for women's rights in Afghanistan, as people are not cooperative, and they are not letting their women as well to do something for women or believe in women's rights. So as I have been working, like, the name of women's rights activist, it is something really controversial when you work for women, when you work for girls in my society. The name itself carries a lot, like, people do not like this name. I understand them, that some people there have been in my country who have misused this title of women's rights activist. And from that, many people, they do not like this name in my country. So with this, it has a lot of challenges for a woman, for a girl, for everybody to advocate for girls' rights, for women's rights in my country. And what I have been thinking of this, like, it was so long, like, when I went to the community and engaged in the community and activities, I saw that the problem is so big and we need to do something urgently. I had a network of people, and I consulted with them, I thought with myself, and we came up with the idea that the younger women, the younger generation, specifically younger women, are the base of the society. And when they become old, they are that half of the society, half of the country, in the country, in Afghanistan. So what I thought was really important and is important is to work, educate them, make them aware of their rights, what women's rights really are, what their rights really are. And I saw the need that we need to work on them, we need to educate them, we need to make them informed of their rights, the girls, the younger generation. So when they are becoming older, when they become the women, they know what their rights are, and they can educate the other generation of Afghanistan. With that, we started this our nonprofit Girls Toward Leadership, that so far we have impacted over 2,000 Afghan girls' lives with our programs and initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcelina, for sharing that, and it has been extremely informative. Now, moving forward to my other Global Youth Fellow, Hawa, and I would ask her the same question. As she's somebody who is working for gender inequality, I'd like to ask her, what are some of the challenges, Hawa, that you have been facing and how you have been able to address them?
Thank you, Rida. And I'm very happy to be here and listening to what Marcelina just explained. Clearly connects how, women and girls globally face similar challenges, although we live in different parts of the world. Yes, so my work as a gender equality advocate and also women rights advocates have encountered a lot of challenges along the way, and there are ways that I've been able to navigate and still moving on because the challenges still persist, they are still there. And one of those challenges that I would like to highlight is the issue of social norms and traditional practices that are persistent even in the family, in the communities, and all of that. So once you go, you try to introduce something talking about gender equality, people take it to be something else, like white people will say, okay, yeah, you just want to talk for women, you want to talk about women, they will always confront you like that with those kinds of things. And sometimes issue of patriarchal and all of those things are some of the challenges we face. And we also face issues of access to resources because, all of the engagements we do supporting women, you cannot work in isolation. You cannot work without financial support. And, women having access to limited resources, like for the sector that I work in, I do most of my work in agriculture, and you cannot work in agriculture without access to land, without access to, those important agriculture resources. And if you look at it, the women have limited access and control to land. So these are some of the things and how we have been able to navigate around it. Thankfully, in Liberia, we have the land rights law that was passed in 2018, and we try to use the law to advocate for access to land for women that we work with to do their farming. But the information on that law is still very limited in rural communities. A lot of people, a lot of women are not aware of that law, so we use the law. We also try to explain to stakeholders, to decision makers, the importance of gender equality, the benefits that it brings, to national development, instead of looking at it like competition or trying to make women to be like aggressive and all of that. No, we tell them, no, this is not it. So I've used like positive messaging and all of that to be able to deal with some of the challenges that we face. Thank you.
Thank you, Hawa, for sharing that. Even with my experience working in Pakistan, I do see this dilemma that many stakeholders, including women and girls, they remain completely unaware of the laws that have been enacted to protect them, and that is a massive issue. And one issue which the human rights institutions have a role in to advocate, to make awareness, to do community outreach, and that's a very permanent role of the human rights institution. But now I am just wondering, and I'd like Mr. Iqbal Ahmed Detho to provide some guidance on this, that what are some of the limitations that are faced by the human rights institutions when they're advancing and protecting women and girls' rights?
Uh, Thank you, Barrister, once again. You know that when we talked about the Paris principles, basically it has three touchstones. One is the operational independence, second is the financial autonomy, and third one is the linkages with the other organs of the state. So when we see these parameters, of course, these national human rights institutions are funded by the governments. They are also founded by either the constitutional provisions or a separate statutory law. And one limitation sometime they faces, that is the executive control of the line departments or the administrative departments for the provision of the resources. So a challenges you are mentioning, that is the lack of resources sometime. B, even if they are going to tap the resources through partner organizations, through donors, through UN, or through other sources, then the funds regulation system is so stringent in most of the countries. And that civil society or the civic space is so much shrinking around the world that if you see the ECOSOC resolutions, the ECOSOC resolution is basically providing, it's a gateway to the UN system. So when you have a general status or you have a special status, many organizations are not having their footsteps in that country. So resultantly, these national human rights institution has a very smaller window of getting resources through the INGOs or through the UN system or through other donors. So one is resources, second is the outreach. I partly agree with you that we have a role of awareness, but partly disagree because it is the function of the executive. Either in many countries, if it is the women and children ministry, or it is the social welfare ministry, or it is the social works, or any other, or the community engagement at that level. So, in every country, like sometime it is a county level, or it's a we say a smaller unit of a district or a district level. So that is the one outreach. Outreach cannot be covered by the NHRIs or the subnational human rights institutions because it's a very difficult and it's a huge and I think a big magnitude issue for any NHRIs to have the awareness and community outreach. So that's the second challenge. And the third challenge, which you mentioned earlier, that is the lack of coordination sometime, lack of integration with other departments, like when you are working on a women rights, any victim of a violence may face the social psycho support. They may need legal aid. They may need the shelter. They may need the monetary. They may need any other legal representation. So that is the the intersectionality, and that is not in the mandate of the NHRIs to get things coordinated. Even we are trying to connect the civil society and the government because NHRIs are the bridges between the civil society and the governments. We may connect them, we may open doors for them. So that is the other practical challenge as well. And other challenge is the sometime some commissions, NHRIs are multiple tasking, and some commission, like in Pakistan, there is a National Commission on the Rights of Child, so that only focusing on the child issue. There is a National Commission on the Status of a Woman that only focuses on the woman. Then there is a National Commission on the Human Rights, so that is the umbrella body. It may see the elderly persons, senior citizens, persons with different abilities, transgender, and other things. So sometimes you need some NHRIs with a particular focus. Sometimes you need with integrated mandate so that they can link with other institutions.
Thank you very much, Iqbal Detho Saab, for sharing with us what are the limitations that the human rights institution are facing. We are almost halfway through our session, and at this point in time now, I would like to ask our participants if they have any questions. And like Rachel said, if you do have any questions, please do type them in the message box, and I can read them out. And do let me know which panelist you would put the question to. And if you could raise your hands if you have any questions, so we can move forward with that as well. So I'm just gonna take a minute to see if anybody wants to ask a question, so that everybody's questions are addressed and we have an inclusive participatory approach in this prep series. So we do have a question, which is how can we connect and support your projects, which is for all of the panelists. But I would rather request one panelist to raise and let me know if they would like to answer that question, because we are a bit short on the time. Hawa, Marcelina.
I can answer if you want.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I would like to thank the Mitch for I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly or not. I'm so sorry if I didn't. Thank you so much for this question. It's really important that you care about supporting our projects, because not all of people are thinking about this. So I really appreciate your question and you the way you think about it. So in our project, personally, our organization goes to a leadership. I started in 2020, and we implemented some small projects and some small grants, and we tried our best to use it the maximum way that we could, the best way that we could, to provide services for Afghan girls. Currently, we are having our programs, but since I am evacuated from my country, I cannot do anything physically for Afghan girls. So all we are doing is online for Afghan girls. We are trying to provide educational opportunities online. We are trying to advocate for them online. We are trying to provide capacity building programs online. So basically what we have for them is different platforms. We have book clubs, we have speaking clubs, we have campaigns that are, like, for example, one of them is the global skill sharing campaign, that we really need speakers. We need people, experts who really are interested to share their knowledge with Afghan girls. We need human resources. Of course, we do need financial resources. And if you see any opportunity, you can feel free to send it over to us, because we really need it. We need people to support us. We need speakers to help with Afghan girls. We need mentors to mentor Afghan girls to apply for scholarships. This is a time that Afghan girls really need to apply for scholarships abroad, because they are not allowed to get an education inside the country because of the Taliban regime. So they need to get outside of Afghanistan. And for that, they need mentors to mentor them and help them with their applications, even financially help them with the Duolingo test, because many of them, they do not have that money to that fees of the Duolingo test to take it and to apply for a scholarship. And many of them I am in contact with, they do not have the money to purchase the package of internet. So it's really hard for them. The situation is really hard, and any help, basically any help, would be really incredibly helpful for us, for the project that we have. And I'm sure for everybody else who are working for women and girls' rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcelina, for so comprehensively answering that question. Now I would move towards Hawa and ask her that what are the human rights institutions in your country?
Okay, thank you. That's a great question, Rida. In Liberia, we have different human rights institutions. We have them at the national level, and also we have some civil society organizations. But at the national level, we have the independent National Commission on Human Rights. That is one of the statutory institutions that is responsible to monitor human rights issues in a country and to ensure that human rights are protected. And we also have the UN body, the UNHCR. We have a branch here in Liberia. And we also have like the UN women, they are here, and UN women advocate for women's rights, they advocate for gender equality. And then at the national level, we have the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection that is there, that advocates for the well-being of women, girls, and gender equality as a whole in Liberia. And there are other civil society organizations that we have the Foundation for Human Rights and Democracy. We have other civil society organizations that are there monitoring, human rights situations and also speaking out. Like my institution, although I'm into agriculture, but we also do a lot of work around human rights, especially women's rights, pushing, making sure that everyone live a life of dignity, live to their full potential, where they can do, whatsoever to explore and do whatever they are able to do, and to be safe from violence and abuse. So in Liberia, these are some of the institutions. I may not be able to name them all, but I think these are the basic ones that are there. Yes, thank you.
Rida, you are on mute.
Sorry, sorry. So I was just thanking Hawa for sharing information on the human rights institutions which are available in her country that were very informative. And now I would like to ask Marcelina the same question. If there is similar human rights institutions that are working in Afghanistan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rida, for the question. I was just busy writing the answer in the chat box. I want to briefly discuss the question for the person who asked. There's the question: how do Afghan women and girls communicate amongst each other, and how does the scholarships reach them? It's all online because we are connected with each other, and there are a number of organizations and initiatives that are working for Afghan girls, like ours, like Girls to Leadership. We are in contact with many Afghan girls. They are participating in our programs, and through our internal groups and WhatsApp groups and social media, we are sharing any opportunity that we have. Any opportunity that our organization offers to them is all through online groups and through social media. They are following us and they apply for our programs, and we can be connected with them. So basically it works like this. And I answered the other question. So about the human rights institutions, actually, unfortunately, right now in Afghanistan, after the takeover of the Taliban in Afghanistan in 2021, there is not any significant institution or groups of people who are working for human rights. There were a number of them that I was aware of, but after the Taliban's takeover, they did not allow those organizations and institutions to go forward and to be operating in the country, unfortunately. And in the meantime, that there are severe violations of human rights in Afghanistan, especially of women and girls. As most of you may be aware, Afghan women and girls are not allowed to get an education, go outside without a male chaperone, get out of the country without a male chaperone. They are not allowed to participate in sports, to go outside many times. And the recent things that we heard on the news, they are not even now allowed to speak publicly. Like their voices are even banned, which is horrible. And it continues like this. There are severe violations of human rights, and there is no institutions currently working in Afghanistan to monitor them, to prevent all these stuff in there, unfortunately.
Thank you, Marcelina, for sharing that. It was definitely something which was very hard. Women suffering anywhere is definitely something that harms and hurts all of us. And it was very unfortunate and horrible to listen to the human rights violations and the silence that women are facing. Now I will move once again to Mr. Iqbal. I will also be highlighting the questions. I'm reading the questions in the chat box, and I will be addressing them after the question to Mr. Iqbal, which is that what are some other human rights institutions other than the Sindh Human Rights Commission that are working in Pakistan, and how they can help promote women's human rights under the Beijing Platform for Action.
Thank you, Rida. Before coming to Pakistani specific question, I think what the other colleague from Afghanistan, Marcelana, was talking about. Sometime before the Taliban takeover, there was the Afghan Documentation Center, which was working like the National Human Rights Institution, but unfortunately, as she mentioned, that it is very much dormant or abandoned. But I think here is the role of the transnational advocacy. One is the advocacy at the national level, and maybe at the regional level or the international level. So, linking with the girls' education issue of the Afghanistan, you saw in recent girls' education. International conference in Pakistan where Malala Yousafzai and all other champions of girls' education around the world, they came over here, and then you saw that this practice was called the modern apartheid in terms of the girls' education, and that also got the other gatekeepers around the world voice that. So, very quickly, that yes, sometime when the national institutions are silent or they are unwilling or unable, then the international institutions can fill the gap. Regarding Pakistan, apart from Sindh Human Rights Commission, as I already mentioned, that there is the institution called the National Commission on Status of a Woman, though it is also a statutory body and it is mean to for the women empowerment and reviewing the laws, so that the sole purpose of that is to talk about the girls and women's empowerment. But nothing restricts the National Commission on the Rights of Child when it is because they have the mandate below 18 years, and girl child it's in their very much mandate. Nothing forbids the National Commission on Human Rights when it is the women rights, or it is, there is a general practice even around the world when UN committees like UN Committee on the Rights of Child, CRC, or the UN Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, CEDA, they issue the joint recommendations like they issued on the harmful traditional practices together. Or you can see the practices of the special procedures in the UN Human Rights Council, where the special rapporteurs issues the joint statements on the issues of the concerning any subject matter. So here I think what we are trying to adopt now in Pakistan, while I took the charge of the Sindh Human Rights Commission, I had a coordination meeting of all the national human rights institutions, and even at my provincial level, I am having a coordination meeting of all the like-minded commissions, like it is a information commission, or it is a healthcare commission, or it is a women rights commission, or it is a child rights commission, so we can have the integrated approach towards a solution of these issues. So I think NHRIs in together and NHRIs in international and national, and other issue which Barrister Rida, I will like to tell you that we are not taking up, and if this international, because you people are doing this in the sidelines of the International UN Commission on the Status of a Woman, so you people urge the UN bodies like a colleague from Liberia mentioned, UN Women or other UN entities, that they should disseminate the concluding observations of these treaty bodies in their countries. They should urge their partners into the implementation of these UN recommendations. So UN entities, UN country representatives, UN working plans, they should also try to be the partner with the local organizations. They should support them, they should disseminate them, they should capacitate them. So not only in disseminating those recommendations, but awareness, mobilization, and many other activities. So UN, wherever possible, UN should chip in these activities.
Thank you, Mr. Iqbal, for sharing these recommendations. especially concerning the fact that the concluding observations by the treaty bodies of the UN should be shared to various stakeholders so that they can understand where the implementation gaps are. So thank you so much for sharing those perspectives and those recommendations. Maria has a question regarding periods. That is, what work is being done on period health in our countries. So I would request Marcelina or Hawa if they would like to take that question.
Okay,
Which will
thank you.
also just to add one thing, sorry, Hawa, that would be our last question for today because we are almost running out of time. We just have 10 or 12 minutes left. Thank you, Hawa, so much for taking up that question. I'm so sorry if I interrupted you in the middle of it.
That's okay, Rida. Okay, so yes, thank you. Talking about menstrual hygiene and all of that, I think for my institution, this is something that we take very important because we realize that you cannot be working with women and girls and leave out that portion of their life, which is very important. So what we have done is to incorporate sexual and reproductive health, information into our programming. And through that, we are able to provide information on menstrual hygiene, information on self-care, information on bodily autonomy, and all of that. So we also do human rights sessions and provide all of these informations to the women so that they are able to live dignified life and to have access to information, because access to information is also a very, very difficult thing that the women don't have. So we also try to include that in our programs, and menstrual hygiene and all of that, some of the things that we present. So it's a holistic package.
Thank you so much, Hawa, for addressing the question and letting us know. We are now moving towards closing of today's excellent discussion that we had regarding perspectives from Libya, Afghanistan, and Pakistan on human rights institutions. And now I would like to ask all of the panelists regarding the way forward. So, Hawa, I would ask you to let me know what are your thoughts, your summarizing version of your thoughts for the way forward.
Thank you, Rida. I think for me, the way forward on, this human rights issue, especially pertaining to women and girls, is to ensure that these human rights institutions find innovative ways to be able to reach out, to be able to implement. Most of the time, you go to the UN, you go to the African Union, you go to other, meetings, these big meetings. They're coming up with good policies and all of that, but the implementation is still a huge challenge. So they need to be able to find innovative ways that they can be able to implement policies that will impact the life of the women and girls, and also to address the issues of injustices. Like in my country, injustice is a huge problem. We have issue of gender-based violence, especially when it comes to rape and all of that. We have a lot of cases that are on the docket. The Ministry of Justice has not been able to prosecute all of these cases, so people are there. Some are going scot-free, women are suffering, and all of these things. So there should be resources allocated for human rights institutions. And we also want, moving forward, that it should not just be lip service. We want these institutions to take actions, and we want them to engage women rights organizations, with all the institutions that are doing work around human rights, but be it on education, be it on agriculture, be it on health, and all of those things that will be able to ensure that women and girls are living dignified life, and that the vision of the crafters at the time of the Beijing Platform will be able to see that this is what we were visioning at the time, and this is what is being achieved. There have been a lot of challenges, we know, but if we work together collectively and with good intentions and with the political will towards women and girls to ensure that gender equality and human rights are achieved, we are able to achieve it, because I know there are a lot of things that, on a continent or in the world, that if people put their attention to, they are able to achieve. And I'm sure if gender equality, if ensuring that women dignity, that women live a dignified life is something that we want as a human race, we are able to do that. And I'm taxing everyone. This is a call to action. Let us all go back to where we come from, to serve as ambassadors of change, to ensure that women and girls' voices are heard, women and girls are able to participate and take on decision-making roles, serve in government, serve in leadership roles where they will be able to bring their issues on the table. Because who else can discuss your issue better than you? It is you that is affected by the issue that is able to discuss it and that is able to find the solution. So women and girls' voices need to be added into all of the discussion, and we task the human rights institution to continue to play active role and to support women's human rights, because it is important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hawa. That was extremely inspiration, your call to action. Thank you so much for sharing your way forward and final remarks. I would now like to move towards Marcelina for her comments for the way forward, as well as her closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Rida. I absolutely agree with what Ms. Hawa mentioned. All of them are really great points that everybody working in human rights needs to consider. A way forward for the for the human rights institutions who are working internationally or nationally, I would like to tell them to not turn a blind eye on countries like Afghanistan or Afghanistan itself. People in Afghanistan, women and girls in Afghanistan specifically, we all need your support. We all need you to support us in such a critical moment of history. So please do not turn a blind eye. Engage as much as possible as you can, because if we do not support each other, nobody else will. So I would like them to keep supporting not only Afghanistan, but other countries who are similar to Afghanistan. There are a lot of them who are suffering the same problems, and but nobody cares about them. So I want them to care on those issues. And for the human rights activists who are working on a smaller level, grassroots levels, I want them to keep their motivation, because I know there are a lot of things on their way that keeps them off of what they're doing. Like there's a lot of how do we say, things that they are not able to continue their work, but I want them to keep their motivation to go on no matter what, and no matter how small the impact of their work is. I want them to continue their work, because it's really important that a small impact that you see, it's a big help for somebody's life, for some groups' lives. So I want them to continue their work, to get connected with people who are working the same, who are like-minded, to pool their resources for a bigger impact. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marcelina, for sharing your perspectives, your way forward, and the inspiration regarding the human rights activists of one of the sustainable development goals as well, which are due in 5 years, which is leaving no one behind. So I hope that we are able to not leave anyone behind, especially our women and girls. And now I would like to request Mr. Iqbal for his remarks for way forward. He has already given some excellent recommendations, and I'd like to ask him if there's any further recommendations or way forward to please share them with us.
Thank you, Barrister. I think you can also add a bit of the recommendations, but my recommendation is uh, first of all, that countries like in developing countries like we, Pakistan or Liberia or Afghanistan or other countries, one recommendation is that these institutions which are like human rights institutions, like in Commission on the Status of a Woman in Sindh province, only a woman can be the chairperson. So this is the way forward, that those bodies which are supposed to work for women and children, they have a specific quota of representation for the women. Sometime, like in my commission, in Sindh Human Rights Commission, we have a specific quota for a woman. Like NCHR, it has a specific quota for at least two member can be women. In National Commission on the Rights of a Child, so one is the representation from top to bottom, whether it is a national or international or subnational institutions. Second, my suggestion is that as both colleagues were narrating their country specific mandate, I would like to say that it is though internationally, like when you people will be going to the uh, Commission on the Status of Women sidelines or main plenary sessions, because this framework, Beijing Platform, is recommendatory in nature, or it is, you can say, uh, advisory in role. So it needs to be aligned with the legally binding, like the third committee of the UN. You might not know, Rida Barrister, that the third committee of the UN General Assembly and the sixth committee that deals with the legal and human rights issues, like the Human Rights Council, like many others. So they should have a linkage where these recommendations of the Commission on the Status of Women are being cross-fertilized into the Human Rights Council resolutions or UN General Assembly, or they are in the treaty bodies. There is some harmonization within these things. So that is the top down. And at the national level, I also mentioned, and other suggestion is that we should not, we need to find the allies. And I very much agree that we need to create the allies, whether it is in the uh, even the corporate sectors. We had to tape in the business and human rights arena is there. You might know that the woman is facing issues even in the informal economy, and whether it is agriculture sector or it is a service sector or it is an industry sector. So they needs the redressal of their issues. So commissions should play their role, because women or girls from low socioeconomic cannot afford the formal judiciary. They should tap these administrative and non-judicial mechanisms for their redressal of the issues. Thank you.
Mr. Iqbal, Ms. Mursalina, and Ms. Hawa. These were some excellent recommendations, some excellent hopes for the future. And as the moderator for today's session, I would like to say that it was an honor for me to listen and appreciate the remarks and the compassion that all the panelists had today for women's human rights. It was really nice to see. And I would also like to thank Rachel, our team lead, who has been extremely supportive of this topic. And, I was so late in sending her the concept note. And despite all of that, we are here and everything's happening. I would like to thank my team, Mursalina and Hawa, who discussed, we were having a call last night and we were discussing the timelines in all of our countries. And I was like, this is night here and there was day somewhere. So this is how we all come together from different parts of the world with the same voice. This is the 30 years since the Beijing Platform for Action. We're celebrating the 30 years, but despite that, so many women and girls are vulnerable, they are left behind, and it will take us many years before we can have equality for all. So this is hope that there's still so many people, all the participants, all the people who attended. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your questions as well. This is a testament to the fact that we will able to see gender inequality in the near future, hopefully. So Rachel, if you would like to, I would formally close this session. If you would like to add anything, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Rita. Everybody's insights were so informative, and it was so wonderful to hear about all of the different perspectives, how we're all fighting the same fight in different ways all over the world. And it's definitely giving us all the energy we need to go into CSW and continue pushing forward. So thank you so much for a wonderful session, everybody. And usually how we close at NGO CSW is everybody turn their camera and unmute and you can say goodbye. We can all see and hear each other.
Bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much. So
Bye.
informative. It was
Bye.
terrific hearing you
Bye.
all and seeing you all.
Thank
Yeah.
you, everybody. Thank you.
Blessings to all.
Thank you.